Hi. In this video I'd like to give you some advice about how to think about and understand the problems for homework number 4 about main effects. And we'll be taking a look primarily at the processed file, but the markdown file is posted on your website. So in homework number 4, the first problem is about the Australian bank data again, where the predictors are the number of type 1 transactions and the number of type 2 transactions, and the response variable y is time, which is the time to process, the teller time to process the transactions in minutes. First part of the problem estimates 3 models. A model that explains teller time as a function of type 1 and type 2 predictors, regressors, M1. A model M2 that explains the teller time in terms of the difference between type 1 and type 2 transactions, and A, the average number of transactions at a bank branch. So model M2 talks about the overall busyness of the number of transactions, and another important feature, D, is how different the number of type 1 and type 2 transactions are from each other. And in model 3, we have the number of type 2 transactions as a predictor, and also the difference between type 1 and type 2. And so we have these 3 models, M1, M2, and M3. We have the summary for M1, we have the summary for M2, and we have the summary for M3. And in the first part, I want you to use M1 only and interpret the beta 1 and the beta 2 coefficients. Well, from the expression of the model that I gave you right up here for M1, beta 1 is the coefficient for type 1 transactions, and beta 2 is the coefficient for type 2 transactions. And so I want you to interpret those 2 coefficients. What do they mean in terms of the values that we get from the model? And here is the summary for M1. Here is the beta hat for the type 1 transactions. Here is the beta hat for the type 2 transactions. And so these are the numbers that I'm asking you to interpret for beta 1 and beta 2. They're estimates of the real beta 1 and beta 2. So please interpret those using the form that has been talked about in the overheads for this section. 2 points for each of those. The next part of the problem asks you to interpret the effects in model M3. What does T2 mean in terms of what does the coefficient for T2 mean in model M3? So I'm asking you to interpret this number right here, T2. What does that number mean? And you have to remember that to interpret one of these, you have to hold the other variables constant. And the problem is, how do you hold D constant when it involves both T1 and T2? You're increasing T2 by 1 transaction. How do you hold D constant? So try to interpret that for the first part of this one, and then interpret the coefficient for D in the second part from model M3. Next part of the homework asks you to use the United Nations UN 11 data, and we're going to make a linear model with the log base E of fertility. Remember that fertility is the number of children per woman, so this would be the logarithm of the number of children per woman. And we're going to have the percentage of the population that is urban, and then we're going to have per person gross domestic product, and that is going to be in a logarithm also. And so in this problem we have model 4P6, which is given right in here, and what I would like to have you do is interpret this percentage urban coefficient. I think you should be using the percentage change interpretation that we talked about in our overheads right in here on, I guess, about overhead 26. We started working on how to interpret a particular, well, overhead 26 is what you will use to interpret the log of per person domestic product. It looks like the other coefficient can be interpreted using the form on page 25. So I want you to use the lecture notes and the overheads to make the interpretations of these coefficients. And this homework will be assessed partly on your written writing and partly on the online quiz. Make sure you let me know if you have questions about this. Good luck.